conditions for the Bahamas, but also start seeing that movement to the north. So I want to get more of the cone in here so we can talk about it. Dennis, one of the factors that we always talk about is how the impacts are well outside the center and well outside the cone. Look at the radius here, all the way around here, and that orange color, that's the tropical storm force winds, so far away from the center. And tough to see, but it's there. That's the hurricane force winds right around the center. So as we move in the forecast, so let's look. This is now we get 2 p.m. on Tuesday, 2 a.m. Wednesday, 2 p.m. Wednesday, 2 p.m. Thursday, and Friday. So we're going to be dealing with this hurricane for most of the week here. So the closer those lines are together, we start seeing some slow movements. So slowly pushing northward, and right now our forecast is off the Florida coast. That's 2 p.m. Tuesday, 2 p.m. Wednesday, to give you an idea of the movement. But this is so important. Just because it's off the coast doesn't mean that we're not going to see impacts. We are. And we have the hurricane warnings up. We've got storm surge warnings up. We're going to talk more about that here in a little bit. So you're going to see all these conditions because the big wind field and a little bit of movement. It's not going to take much at all. If it's a little bit left of the track, you'll start seeing these hurricane force winds right on the coast, and if you're further away, even spreading inland. So either way, tropical storm force winds, and you can see some of those hurricane force winds as well. So up the coast, if you notice, we're starting to expand. So with time, as this system, the hurricane, moves northward, we're going to expand those watches and warnings up the coast. You can expect those. The watches will go out as we get into 48 hours out before the hurricane conditions and the storm surge conditions, and then the warning out 36 hours before those conditions. So that's what's going to happen, and we're going to be dealing with this throughout the week. Some of the impacts that we have here, storm surge, we'll talk more about it here a little bit and how we calculate these. I mean, looking at the storm surge, we've got some watches and warnings up, the warning for a large portion of the coast, and then watches going up for portions of the North Georgia coast and into South Carolina as well, including Charleston and Savannah, 4 to 7 feet possible in some of these areas. So a big reminder for everybody, listen to those local officials. We're working with them all the time. They know these low areas, and if they tell you to leave, really leave. Don't wait for the last minute. If you're waiting for this storm to get there, guess what? You might be too late, because as water gets there before the wind, before the center, and if you wait, the water could be over the road, and all of a sudden you're trapped and you can't get out. That's why we time this out. We give people enough time to get out. Really listen to that, because guess what? I'm a tall person, and 7 foot over my head. That is a lot of water. So that's the storm surge, and again, we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Rainfall amounts here. The good news is most of the rainfall is going to be off the coast. I mean, we've been talking about that, but remember, every once in a while you see a little bit change in that forecast, and it doesn't take much. See that tight, we call it a gradient, a tight gradient. Each one of these lines and colors representing a different range of rainfall. A little wobble, a little bit off to the left, bring the center a little closer, and guess what? Some of these higher values could easily jump off to the left as well. And remember, those rain bands producing a lot of rain that we'll have to watch as well. So I talked about storm surge, and historically 50% of the fatalities in tropical systems comes from the storm surge, a very dangerous aspect of hurricanes. Wanted to bring in Jamie Rome. He's in charge of our storm surge here, one of the world's greatest experts on storm surge. So Jamie, come in here. I just wanted to ask you some questions. We talked about the values, talked about how the water could get in there early. I mean, how do you calculate this? I mean, if the storm gets bigger, smaller, moves off a little bit to the coast or comes on the coast, will these numbers change much?
Yeah, so what we call a shore parallel scenario. So that's a case where the storm is just moving parallel to the coast. This is one of the hardest scenarios to predict storm surge, because even a slight change to the left or a slight change to the right makes a world of difference when it comes to storm surge. So what we've done here is to try to communicate that uncertainty. So if the storm tracks a little farther offshore, get closer to the 4 feet of storm surge. If the track is a little bit closer to shore, more of the 7 feet of storm surge. And because evacuations in this country are based off storm surge, we really have to take the path of least regret and assume scenarios that do impact the coastline, because otherwise what would happen is emergency managers wouldn't have the guidance they need to make evacuation decisions, and we could potentially leave people in harm's way.
One question we get sometimes, Jamie, and I've got this on social media. I mean, some areas it just looks like it's a skinny line, right? Some places it looks like it goes in further. I mean, what's going on?
A couple things. The shape of the coastline, or how quickly the water gets deep as you move into the ocean, so-called bathymetry, or the continental shelf. Here in southeast Florida, we have a really sharp continental shelf, meaning the water gets deep really, really quick, or the Gulf Stream snugs up right up against the coastline. This limits the inland penetration of storm surge. Now you contrast that as we go up the coastline and all of a sudden it starts to widen out. That's because the continental shelf gets wider as we get up further into the southeast. Also, this area has less topography or less elevation, and so that allows the water to go further inland.
Great explanation. So historically, 50% of fatalities, storm surge is a very dangerous situation. Pay attention to it. Again, the officials tell you to leave early because that water gets there before the storm does. So that's the latest information we have on the hurricane. Thank you, Jamie, so much, the expert on this. And that's been it. So live from the National Hurricane Center, this has been Ken Graham.